Hey, what's up everyone? Hope it's going well. Today we're going to be doing a top 5 Harley Davidson engine sounds. I was initially going to rank all these motors made by Harley Davidson that they had ever built by the sounds, but some of these early motors sounded so similar and some of the later motors sounded also so similar that I thought it would be very difficult to rank them properly, and especially with something as subjective as sound. So today we're just going to do the top 5 sounding motors that the Harley Davidson Motor Company has ever built. Another compounding factor that led me to this choice was the fact that I want to provide good content on this channel and provide you with good engines and sounds that sound good to you. So if I put the exhaust sound of the Street 750 or the Pan America, I feel like this would be bad content, and I don't really care to provide you with crappy sounding motors today. A little background and some interesting facts about the famous Harley sound is that Harley Davidsons only have one crank pin, and this causes that bang bang pause sound that Harleys were famous for the longest time. This later evolved into a bang bang pop when Harley decided to fire off both spark plugs when either piston was at the top of the stroke. A sound that was so famous that Harley tried to trademark it in 1994, in which they were unsuccessful. Unknowingly, they already had the formula perfected, and they didn't even realize it. Continuing on, we need to set a few ground rules. So, I will only be considering stock exhaust systems on the stock unmodified motor, and I will try to provide a few different audio clips for each motor, and of course, this list will be very subjective, so while you might not agree with my opinions, and my opinions might not be the popular opinion, this is how I would personally rank them, so keep in mind that I am ranking these on a personal level, and only by the sound of these bikes, and not by any of the frames or other aspects that accompany these motors. I will not be considering the history behind these motors or any other aspects other than the sound of the motor. If you disagree with any of these on my list, make sure to let me know down in the comments. And with that, let's get into number 5. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe today. In 5th place today, we have the Harley Davidson Knucklehead. This is the first Harley Davidson motor to feature an overhead cam, and frankly, this motor sounds pretty good. You can tell it has that older style sound to the motor, where it's very raw and there's nothing holding this motor back. There's also a lot of history behind this motor, but as I said earlier, we won't be considering the history behind any of these bikes, but this is one of my personal favorite Harley Davidson motors ever made. But it is number 5 on our list, and this motor has a very unique sound where it almost sounds like the engine is barely continuing to run, but as soon as you rev it up, after a little bit of lag, it gets screaming and roaring, and it gives you that Harley Davidson sound that they're so famous for. So, take a listen. Coming in at number 4, we might have a little bit of a controversial opinion here. Harley Davidson enthusiasts don't even like to call this bike a Harley, and the motor the same way. This motor was co-designed with Porsche, in which they partnered with Harley Davidson for its development. This created one of the most powerful Harley Davidson motors to date, and resulted in one of the most mean, raw, and unfiltered engines from the modern Harley era. This bike is very loud and doesn't sound restricted at all, giving it that really quick revving, deep rumbly tone that Harley Davidson is so famous for. Not to mention that this Harley was quicker than most, and the motor actually made pretty good horsepower. So while Harleys might not have a lot going for them, and they often just create these large motors which don't produce a lot of horsepower, but instead produce a lot of torque, and this very unique sound, this motor not only produced that torque and sound that Harley owners had come to expect, but it created horsepower like no other Harley engine before it. And yet the Harley owners and the Harley enthusiasts hated this motor, but that's not to stop it from sounding great. So, let's take a listen. Coming in at third place, we have the Harley Davidson twin cam motor. This motor had that very low, lumpy, cam chopping sound and that classic Harley Davidson idle sound. However, when this motor was given a little bit of throttle, it not only revved up quick and sounded mean, but it was probably one of the last raw and unfiltered sounding Harleys before they got into the modern age, where emissions took over and ruined their stock exhaust sound. So with that, let's have a listen. Next up, we have second place, this motor being from one of Harley's greatest ages and their age of producing the best sounding motors. We have the Harley Davidson panhead motor. This is when Harley Davidson motors started to really define themselves and they started to really nail down and implement that traditional lumpy Harley sound. This motor started getting that sound of a heartbeat or that lumpy potato sound, or what some would say sounds like a horse running. This motor has that very distinct sound where you can tell like it's missing a beat, but I'll let the motor talk for itself. Let's have a listen. Before we get in our number one spot, we have an honorary mention with the pan shovel motor. This motor was almost the shovel head motor, but it still had the bottom end of the pan head, giving it a very unique mix between the shovel head and the pan head sound. Let's take a listen. And with that, let's get into our number one pick. The best sounding Harley Davidson motor of all time is the shovel head motor. This motor had a sound like no other, and with its consistent idle sound that Harleys are famous for, and has been engineered directly into them, this motor seems to be the pinnacle of that sound. Many people say this motor sounds more like a horse running or a heartbeat or that lumpy potato sound more than any other motor ever produced by the motor company. This motor truly has a special place in many Harley owners and enthusiasts' hearts, and it's clear to see why this is one of the most balanced and best sounding V-twins ever made. And there's never been anything like it produced since. So with that, take a listen. Thank you for watching this video, and make sure you like, comment, and subscribe.